Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I give you a backyard plant nursery tour and we do some cleanup. So let's go. It's the middle of April and this is my third year having a backyard plant nursery. In previous years, I've mostly focused on selling perennials, which is what is in this bed here. However, this year I'm also going to be focused on selling more annual flowers as well as vegetable starts. I've made a lot of videos having to do with my backyard plant nursery, answering lots of questions that you've had, including how big my nursery is, what kind of plants I sell, whether or not you need to have a license in order to have a nursery, and all sorts of other questions. I highly recommend that you check out the playlist that I created below. It has a lot of great videos, a lot of great information. So the focus on today's video is to just start cleaning up this bed. I'm going to be selling plants probably within the next 1 month. It's very important for me to go through and just cut back any perennials as well as do some minor weeding. I figured I'd bring you along with me today. We do that together, and while I'm working, I'll go over what plants I have and what I need to do to cut them back. There's definitely some weeds that are starting to come up, and it's very important for me to come in here and start weeding the areas as best as I can, especially in between the rows. Once I get the rows weeded out, probably within the next week, I'll come in here with wood chips that I got for free, and I'm going to be laying them in beneath each of the rows just to help suppress the weeds. In terms of selling the perennials, I'm not planning to just start selling all the perennials up front. I'm going to focus on the perennials that are blooming early. For example, chives, usually they're right over here. They're starting to wake up, they look really good, and they will bloom within the next month. So those are definitely a perennial that I'm going to be selling right off the bat early on, within the next week actually. So I'm just coming in here and I'm just collecting any leaves that have blown in here. But I know that on a windy day, more leaves might come in here and that's perfectly fine. I just want to be able to expose as many of these plants that I can. And every so often, I'm going to zoom you right in so you can take a look at the plants, and I want to show you what I'm doing for each of the plants. So all I'm doing for the chives is I'm coming in here and I'm pulling back last year's growth. And if I do find any weeds, I'm also pulling the weeds out at this time. It's important to clean back your perennials. You want nice, healthy perennials. Plus, it just makes for a very nice presentation. And just like in your own flower beds, it's really important to get after those weeds while they're small. If you don't do that, those weeds are going to take over an area. And then worse yet, they're going to go to seed, and that will really be a problem. I love chives, and I think that they sell really well. And not only that, I've used chives actually in my spring containers and pots. So I'm definitely going to be trying to make that point when I'm trying to sell them this year. Now you'll notice these are small pots. I like to sell a lot of my plants in 3-inch pots. What I've found is it's a lot easier for people, especially older people, to have a small plant and just pop this in their landscape. The larger the plant, the more expensive it is, but also the harder it is to dig a hole as big as the plant is. With these, you only have to make a small hole. I know some people that have backyard plant nurseries, after they weed, they might put something like a pre-emergent down. And a pre-emergent would be something like preen. That's one example. And the purpose of something like preen is after you've weeded an area, I wouldn't recommend preen, let's say on something that you're going to eat like onions. But let's say it's a flower. If you put a pre-emergent down like preen, it just helps suppress the weeds. And it really is up to you. Some people love to use it. Some people do not like to use it. I think it's more of a personal choice. Where you live, a lot of your perennials may be much further along. Where I live, these are one of the first things that are waking up in my plant nursery. That's why I say I still have about a month before I can really start selling a lot of perennials out of my plant nursery. What I've found is a lot of times people want to buy the things that look pretty, the things that are blooming at that given time. So it's very important to put that out on, for me, it's going to be Facebook Marketplace, and list different plants as soon as they're really looking good, as soon as they're blooming, or in this case, just waking up. I want to be able to sell these well before the nurseries are selling them, which is why I want to get them listed sooner than later. What I found with chives is there's a big rush for them early in the spring, but then after spring, not as many people want them because they already have bought them for their own gardens. And if you have chives, then you know once you have one chive plant and it goes to seed, you will have a ton of chives for the rest of your life and enough to share with other people. These all look very good. And again, I know they're small, they're 3-inch pots, but they work out well. And I want to point out a lot of my pots are sunken into the ground. In other words, you'll notice that the soil has been lifted up on either side of all the pots here. The reason is our winters can be pretty harsh and these pots are very small. So I like to sink them into the ground so that they really have a better chance of survival. Another thing I'm going to be doing this year is picking up each pot. And if I see a ton of roots coming out of the bottom, I'm going to take advantage of that situation. I'm going to divide the plants. That way I can turn one plant into 2 plants. Even though there are small roots coming out of the bottom here, I'm not too worried about this. But by middle of summer, if these don't sell, I am going to have to come in and divide these up. Last year, I made a conscious effort to separate my plants so that they were in squares or blocks. And the reason is, if someone is coming and they want to buy something, it's a lot easier for them to come in here and they can pull from this side, they can pull from that side. And if I had to, like with some of my taller plants, I could always add some sort of a stake around them so that they're not flopping over. I found that when I didn't do them in boxes like this and instead I made rows, like I had a row here of one plant, then I had another row over here. What was happening was some of the taller plants were flopping on top of the shorter plants. So that's why I switched to more of a box system. So if I had to, I can add like 4 stakes, some string, and then those plants that are very tall can just kind of lean on each other but not flop on the plants around them. So the next plant that I'm working on over here, these are called English daisy. Another name for them is lawn daisy. And if you know anything about them, they're very sweet, they're very cute. They bloom in the springtime. But once they go to seed everywhere, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. And what I'm noticing right now is hardly any of these pots have English daisy waking up in them. It could be one of 2 things. They still haven't woken up or I lost them. Usually I have pretty good luck and I don't just lose a whole entire grouping of plants, but it's still too early to tell. So I'm just surveying, I'm looking in here, and come on in, I'm going to give you a closer look so you can see what I'm looking at. I mentioned in a recent video that one of the biggest reasons why I even started a plant nursery was because I used to winter sow. I'd end up with a ton of plants and then I had nowhere to put them. And I always, for many, many years, wanted to have basically a temporary holding spot for plants. Plants that I bought on clearance, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with them, or plants that I divided from my yard, but I wasn't sure where I was going to place them in my yard. So I always wanted something like that. And that's why I ended up making a plant nursery. It's really been such a great thing for me. I really enjoy it. And this definitely is a place that still continues to be a temporary holding spot for me, for plants that I buy on clearance or that I divide and I don't know where I want to put them, or maybe I winter sowed some plants and I don't know what I want to do with them. So all of these pots should have this English lawn daisy in them. Again, we just had snow a few days ago, so I'm not too concerned right now. And you know, if I go to a nursery here in New Hampshire, I can almost guarantee you that they have English lawn daisies that are in full bloom. And you have to remember, when you buy plants at a nursery, they're in a greenhouse, it's much warmer. So these plants, if they are going to come up this year, they're going to come up whenever they're ready. But I don't want to wait to open my nursery until all these plants wake up, because I'm missing the boat then on opportunity to sell plants such as those chives. So all I can do right now is just come in here and just clean off last year's growth. The next plant that I'm working on here is called great blue lobelia. It is a beautiful, beautiful flower that you want to have in your garden because it blooms in the late summer, early fall months. Many of these pots were pots that I got for free. I got them from, a lot of them from a local nursery that's close to me. And at that nursery, they have a recycling bin. A lot of people buy plants and they don't care to keep these pots, but they also don't want to add them to the landfill. So I love to go to that nursery and just collect as many pots as I can. Clearly there's a caution with that, and the caution is there is a chance that maybe some of the pots had disease in it because you don't know what was inside of those pots. It's coming from whoever's house. So it's always a good idea to clean out the pots. Do I always do it? No, but it's important for me to tell you that just in case you try doing the same thing and all of a sudden you have a disease that spread through a whole bunch of plants. It's a good practice to do that. Okay, come in closer. I'm going to show you what the great blue lobelia seedlings look like and what I'm doing to clean them up. I sold a plant right in this little hole here at the end of the season. That's why there's a little gap here. So with great blue lobelia, all I'm doing is I'm cutting back any flower stalks that were here from last year. Now a bunch of these did not have flower stalks on them. The reason is they were probably seedlings that I dug up from my yard and I just potted up. As is the case with many perennials, they usually don't flower the first year. But this year, many of these should have blossoms on them, which will be nice. I can just come in here if I want and just basically fluff them up a little bit, just to remove some of the dead growth that's on there. A lot of this cleanup is very similar to the cleanup that you would do in your own landscape, which, you know, sometimes can get overwhelming for me, trying to decide how am I going to spend my time. Am I going to be cleaning up the perennials in my nursery or the perennials in my flower beds? I really try hard to divvy up my time the best that I can. If I could give one bit of advice, if it came to wanting to start a plant nursery, my advice would be start small. That's the best way to do it. I've been doing this for 3 years and I started very small, and each year I expand, but very, very slowly. I don't just want to jump in and be overwhelmed. You'll hear me say that a lot in my videos when it comes to creating garden beds, creating a backyard plant nursery, winter sowing, or even starting seeds indoors under lights. I really, really strongly encourage you to take it slow, especially if you're new to any of these things. I think you'll be more successful when you start small with anything and then expand and grow. The next plant that I'm working on over here is called a chocolate chip Ajuga. It's a ground cover and it's smaller than the typical Ajuga that you see. It's very cute, very sweet. In fact, I got a very small plant of it from my friend Linda, who also has a backyard plant nursery. And I got it maybe 2 years ago, possibly 3 years ago. And every single year since then, I've been dividing it. And even though it's in my nursery, I do not have this plant in my landscape. If someone wants to buy 1 or 2 pieces, that's fine, but I'm not looking to sell all of them because clearly I want to use some of it in my landscape as well. As I work on each plant, I look at it carefully. And again, if I think that it needs to be divided, I'm going to go ahead and divide it on a different day. I'm looking at the roots. There aren't a lot of roots coming out of the bottom. There are a few like this one here, that one there, and maybe these 2 over here that look like I might have lost them. I'm going to give it some time and I'm going to wait and see. And if I did lose them, I can always try to come in here and see if there's any that I can divide, just to fill up a pot and fill up this area, but I'm not too worried about it. There will always be losses no matter what you do in a plant nursery. The key is trying to minimize the losses and then learning why did you have losses, especially if you had a lot of losses. If you had a little bit of losses, that's natural. It's normal and it's to be expected. It happens. One thing that I have not been great about is putting labels or tags inside of each pot. It's a lot of work. And to be honest with you, most people are fine. They understand. And some people know exactly what they're buying and they don't need a label. But nevertheless, many times I will bring down pens and labels. And if someone just wants me to label them, I have no problem adding quick labels for them before they go home with their plants. I get a little help from Mr. Budget Gardener on the weekends if I need it when it comes to maybe putting down the wood chips or doing some weeding. Otherwise, when it comes to the plant sales, a lot of the potting up, a lot of that is done by me. These right here are some sort of a sedum. They have like a bluish color to them. And then there's another little sedum here. And then right next door, these are fringed bleeding hearts. I don't have a ton of the fringed bleeding heart over here. I just had some small divisions, some small seedlings from my yard. Most likely I will come in and shop my own nursery to pull some of these fringed bleeding hearts because I have some areas I want to tuck them in. I guess technically I will be my first customer in my own plant nursery. It's really important to get after these weeds. The plant that I'm working on right now in this whole area is rudbeckia or black-eyed Susan. Very popular seller. This could be a loss. This one here could be a loss, and maybe a few over here. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm not too quick in pulling the plants yet. I want to give them some time. It's still quite early. You might have rudbeckia where you live, and your plants might be much further along. You might be in a much warmer climate. I think that's what's neat about watching different YouTube channels is you can see that. You can see how things grow quicker or slower compared to where you live. I found with having a plant nursery, some people just want native plants. Some people are looking for medicinal plants. Some people want more just ornamental, pretty flowers. It's really a mix, which I think makes it a lot of fun. And oftentimes someone will stop by and they don't know what they're looking for. They're new to gardening and they just want advice. So I usually will ask questions like, how much space are they trying to fill? What's their budget? And other questions like, do they have sun? Do they have shade? Things along those lines, as well as what plants do they currently have in their yard. And then I can give them suggestions based on that. Here we have another ground cover. It's called Pachysandra. Now, I've gotten comments before on my videos for ground covers like Pachysandra, Ajuga, vinca, and for each state or country, I guess, that we live in, there are certain plants that are considered invasive, and they're going to vary from area to area. As someone that has a backyard plant nursery, I have a list that I check every year when I renew my plant nursery license to see which plants are considered invasive in New Hampshire. I will not sell invasive plants. Pachysandra is not considered invasive. And I've been asked sometimes on my videos to please stop, promoting this plant and instead promote native plants. And I totally get it and I understand it. But to be honest with you, a lot of the plants in my nursery are not native, and then a lot are. I have a mix. And I do the best I can to offer a good variety. So I let everyone know if they're going to buy Pachysandra that it will take over an area. But in some cases, people want that. They specifically want it to take over an area. And that's what I always say, is that ground covers have a place in this world as well. I list on Facebook Marketplace. That's the only place I advertise, and it really has worked out well for me. I don't plan on changing that. And when I do my listing, hopefully within the next week, I'm definitely going to be putting the chives on there. I have onions that I started from seed. Those are going to be on there. I also have strawberries that I'm digging up from my raised beds because I have too many strawberries. So I'm going to be selling strawberries. Now, I started a bunch of alpine strawberries from seed. They are super small. I don't think you're supposed to even take strawberries off of them the first year. I think you're supposed to just let them get bigger. So this morning I was potting up those little strawberry plants. Those are just going to get placed into my nursery. I'll plan on selling them next year. I really didn't even need to grow them because I already have plenty of alpine strawberries, but I thought it would be fun to make a video showing you my process to do that. The next plant that I'm working on, which is down over here, is called lamium. Lamium is also a ground cover. It's also known as deadnettle. It also likes to spread aggressively. It's part of the mint family. What I love about lamium is you can actually take it and you can put it in window boxes, container pots, and it makes for a really nice spiller. In fact, I really enjoy using perennials in a lot of my pots and containers because then you can use them year after year. And then when you're done with them, you can put them back in your landscape. When it comes to the lamium, it's very scraggly. So I'm coming right in and I'm cutting it back. It is just barely waking up. In fact, a lot of them look dead, but it's still early, so I'm not worried about it. But I want to come right in and I just want to cut them back. I could wait, but you know how it is with gardening. We say we'll wait, and then we just don't get to it. And now we've missed the window of opportunity. And since we're out here together, let's just get this done. And if you don't cut them back, what happens is they just, like I said, they'll look scraggly and they will put on new growth on the tips, but it won't look very good. So it's better to just get after it and cut them back. It's still been very wet here. We actually had snow a few days ago. We have rain, but as soon as we don't have any moisture, I will have to add a sprinkler down here. My plant nursery is not set up with any irrigation. I just add an oscillating sprinkler out here and I'll just run it. I might look into maybe getting a timer or something like that just to make life a little easier. When it comes to giving my perennials a fertilizer, I just like to give something like a 10-10-10, and Very, very small amount. Just sprinkle it on the top and scratch it into each pot. 10-10-10 is just a basic, cheap, but good, effective, all-purpose fertilizer. Literally a few weeks ago when I came out here, I could hardly tell what anything was. That's how slowly things are waking up. I think just like a lot of other parts of the United States, it's been a fairly cool, wet spring, which means things are just waking up a little bit slower in certain parts, including in New Hampshire. When it comes to any questionable pot, I'm going to wait at least a month, and then I can always come back and reassess. And if I need to, I can pull pots at that time. I feel silly doing this because there's really not much to look at in terms of cleanup. But honestly, I've been wanting to show you what's in the nursery. I know a lot of you have asked. Some people that have subscribed to my channel are specifically watching it because of the nursery. And let's face it, what I'm doing is very important. It's all part of the nursery. I have so many other things that I should be doing. This is basically step one, right after a long winter. It's just coming in and cleaning up sticks, twigs, any fallen trees, leaves, doing some basic weeding, fluffing up plants, and just getting ready for the season. And I want to get my pathways covered with the wood chips sooner than later, because you know how it is. All of a sudden the weeds will explode. Here's another plant that I plan on selling in the spring. It's called Lungwort or pulmonaria. They are still quite small, but it doesn't matter. I will be listing them because they are just starting to wake up. And those look very pretty in the springtime. And again, these are alive. We're not quite sure, so we'll just have to wait and see. The good news is, for whatever reason, if I have pots that a plant didn't make it, let's say this one didn't make it, I have so much lungwort in my yard, I could definitely fill up the empty pots and restock that way. Not a problem. This whole section over here, these are hosta. They look dead, don't they? The hosta have not come up yet, so I know that I put hosta back here. I'm just going to come in, I'm just going to do very little cleanup here, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to work on next. I tried placing the shade-loving plants like hosta towards the back of my bed. And the reason is because the back of my bed gets more shade than the front of the bed. Just like weeding your flower beds, it's so good to weed this area of my yard now. If I don't do that, the weeds will just take right on over, and that's not a good thing. I was looking at these plants over here, and I'll bring you in closer in a minute. What these are called European ginger. It's a type of wild ginger. It's a beautiful ground cover, actually. It's really known for its glossy leaves, but it does have a very faint little red flower that comes out early in the spring, but you don't even notice it. It's not known for its flowers. Very, very pretty plant. And I only have, like maybe 18 of them here, but I have plenty more in my yard if I had to get them from there. It's definitely one of those plants that not everyone knows of. So a lot of times I'll show them what it looks like in my yard. And once they see it in the yard, then they want it. That's what the European ginger looks like when it's just waking up. Still quite small. The next plant here is an ornamental grass, and it's called ribbon grass. And the ribbon grass, just like any ornamental grass, I need to get after it, and I'm just going to clean it all up because the new growth is just starting to appear at the base. I actually don't have ribbon grass anywhere in my landscape. There was someone on Facebook Marketplace last year that wanted to have a number of her flower beds thinned out, and she had listed it on Marketplace, and myself, as well as a number of other people, stopped by and helped her thin out her beds. And she even said to me, it's totally okay if you don't want to use certain plants like this in your landscape, do whatever you want with them. If you want to sell them, sell them. So many of the plants I did keep for myself. But when it comes to the ribbon grass, I'm a little nervous about it. I'm not quite sure if it's invasive. I mean, it's not considered invasive in New Hampshire, but you know what I mean. I don't want it to take over a flower bed. In other words, it might be a little aggressive, I guess is the right word. So what I foresee myself doing with ribbon grass is putting it in a pot or container this year and maybe using it in the center or towards the back of the pot or container just as a thriller. And I'm just coming in and I'm just cutting it as low as I can. What I've learned about ribbon grass from having it last year is eventually it grows, it gets tall, and it almost starts flopping over in this area. So then I just come back in here and I just hack it back again and it regrows. So for that reason, right now, even though it's starting to grow a little bit at the base, I'm okay with just coming in and just cutting it way back. This is not a plant I foresee selling for at least another month or so. But you never know. I actually did a fair amount of cleanup in my plant nursery last fall, which is why when you see me cleaning a lot of areas, it's not too horrible. Because the reality is, as much as I want to leave as much as I can up for all the beneficial insects and all the critters, there's just so much work to be done in the spring. So you kind of have to do what works for you and your schedule in your yard. One thing I want to check is the roots on these. So right now, they're not bad. They're not coming out of the bottom. I was worried that they were. But again, I can almost guarantee these plants will need to be, I won't pot them up because again, I don't want to dedicate a lot of room to big plants, which means more expense to other people, bigger holes for people to have to dig. So from my plant nursery, I prefer to have smaller plants. So I would rather come in and if I have to, divide all of these down by half. And that would just double my inventory. So I'll have to do like a midsummer check on certain plants and then assess, and then if I need to divide, I can do it at that time. Well, I don't know what I was thinking. I totally thought we would get this whole entire area cleaned and weeded today. Do you ever do that where you set these high goals and they're not realistic? But it feels so good to get out here and start this project. What I can do on a different day is come out in a different bed, maybe the same one, and we'll continue cleaning. So at least you have a general idea so far of what plants I have in my plant nursery, things that I'm doing in my plant nursery. And this year will be my first time basically selling plants in stages so that I'm not just opening up my plant nursery for all the plants in here because there are a lot that are not awake. So I'm going to do it in stages with some of the plants that I already mentioned. And there's probably other plants too that I haven't mentioned. It's not going to be a lot to start with. And I might even offer, if anyone has a greenhouse and they can take care of them, I might even start selling some of my tomato seedlings because I have a lot of them. And maybe this people out there that have grow lights or they have a greenhouse and they want to buy them and then they can take care of them. In fact, that's one thing I've been doing is going on Facebook Marketplace. And I did notice within the last few weeks, there's a lot more people that are starting to sell their seedlings for their vegetables, including their peppers, including their tomatoes. So I'm getting a general idea of pricing. I'm getting a general idea of varieties that people have. Let's head down this way. I know what the next plant is. This is called obedient plant. And these are definitely plants that I've never bought. They're plants that I've collected the seeds from different places, and I winter sowed the seeds. That's a big reason why I ended up with my plant nursery. There are tall white ones, short white ones, and then it's either like a purple or a light lavender colored ones in here. So a couple of different kinds. And again, I'm noticing some patches where there isn't much life, and then there are ones that are coming right up. I'm looking at the roots and they look good. They're not coming out of the bottom. So nothing is pot bound or root bound. And that's a question I've had before is since these pots are in the ground like this, do the roots come out from the bottom? Yep, unfortunately they do as the plants get bigger and more established. So I do try to check them at least in the spring and then again halfway, maybe in the middle of summer, and then again in the fall. And if the roots are coming out from the bottom of a good amount of the plants in a section, then at that point I divide them and just basically create more plants that way. The other thing I try to do is if a pot is fallen over or leaning in a way that I don't think it's going to get rain, then I just right it so it's a little straighter up. Because sometimes the deer do come in here and they're checking out the plants and they're seeing what's happening. And when they do that, they might move a couple of the plants around. Speaking of the deer, a few people have asked me, how do I deal with deer pressure in my yard or in my plant nursery or both? And I really don't do too much when it comes to deer pressure. They're around, but they don't decimate my plants. One thing I have done with some of the hosta in my backyard that I noticed they were nibbling on was I sprinkled Irish Spring soap. But honestly, there's so many different things you can do out there. Just do an internet search and then try something. Try something and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, do another internet search, because there's a lot of different ways you can try to deter the rabbits and the deer. And something that works for one person might not work for another, because those deer and rabbits are smart. The obedient plant goes all the way up to about there. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to keep cleaning up, and then I'm going to meet you down over there. The rows that are in between each section of plants is very, very narrow. It's probably about a foot, I would say. So there's not a lot of walking room, to be honest with you. It makes it really difficult in terms of how many plants I can pack in my nursery. I really have packed it to the maximum that I can. And I have a fairly good selection of plants. That's why I try not to have too many of one plant. But there are definitely some plants that I wish I had less of. There are other plants that I wish I had more of. I'm going to bring you into the next plant that we're going to work on. This is probably one of my favorite plants to have, and I might just have to take all of them and put them in my landscape. Come on in and I'm going to show you. You might have already guessed it. It's a sedum, and it's Autumn Joy. Years ago, I never really appreciated this particular sedum. I love it now because I realized in the late summer, early fall, when I don't have a lot of color in my yard, how much impact this plant really makes. So all I'm doing right now is I'm just following each of the stems down to the base, and I'm just cutting them back just to clean up the plants as they push out new growth. I had a whole bunch of the Autumn Joy sedum in my backyard in a very messy flower bed that I'm working on right now. And I have an area where I had a bunch of trees removed recently. I think that these would look really pretty in there. I would have to try it out and see how they do, because this type of plant does need a lot of sun, and I'm not quite sure how much sun they'll get in that new area. I might not put a bunch out there, but I'd at least experiment with a few just to see how they do. Some of these look like there's no life in them, but on a few of them, if I look carefully, I can see they're just barely waking up. I've had a number of people tell me they actually like this size of pot, because then they can buy 2, 3, 4 plants, however many they want, and then they can really space them out. You know me, I love dividing plants whenever I can, but not everyone's like that. Some people, it's just easier for them to buy small plants and then just let them grow bigger over time. This plant is called Yarrow or Yarrow. I have it in like a magenta, hot pink color. I also have it in a white color. I think the white one is a little more wild. And I'm just going to come in and clip off. There's just small pieces that need to be clipped off. I must have come in here last fall and really cleaned it up. So there's really not a lot to clean up when it comes to the yarrow. I've learned that yarrow makes a great cut flower, so it actually sells very well. And when I'm cutting back, I'm not too concerned if I cut a leaf, because they're just going to keep on growing anyway. Yarrow loves to spread, and I'm looking at the roots. These are all still very small. They're not very big plants. I must have divided them down last year. And you might be wondering, why do I divide them down to single plants, maybe 2, 3 plants per pot? They're small pots. If I pack them with too many plants, then the roots are just going to go out of control. I have plants over here. I don't know what they are. They're not coming up yet, so time will tell. With these guys over here, this is a type of variegated short grass. I don't know the name of it. I got a very small piece of it from my mother-in-law's house, and I had it in an area where it was getting too wet and they were not doing well. I didn't want to lose the plant, so I potted it. I divided it up, I potted it, and I just put them down here. So these are not for sale. These will end up going in my landscape. And the same applies with these plants. These are a different type of lungwort or pulmonaria. And I had just bought one. I don't know the variety, to be honest with you, but I bought one, and right after I bought it, I divided it down. So soon I will be shopping my plant nursery and picking these up for myself. They have a really pretty leaf. They're a little different than anything I have. And then, well, this is boxwood. And I want to say years ago I bought some boxwood, some like small little miniature ones. I bought one, and I really wanted to use it somewhere in my yard because it was so cute, but I didn't know where I wanted to put it. Well, I think I know where I want to put it. So on a different day, we will come shopping in the nursery and we will take these boxwoods. It started with one, and then I just divided it a few times. The same with a few plants in here. I have some geum. So all I'm going to do with the geum is just cut it back. Now begins a whole bunch of different echinacea, all different kinds of echinacea. There are echinacea that I have winter sown from a few years ago that should bloom for the first time this year. And then there are the purpurea, purple coneflower, that reseeds itself very readily in my yard. Whenever I find a seedling, I pot it up and I bring it down in my nursery. Well, now you have an idea of what I'm doing in my yard. I think it's very important, at least for me, to stay balanced at this time of year, work a little bit in my plant nursery, small amounts. Today we tackled 2 rows. I still have about 7 or 8 more rows to go, but then I still have a lot going on with seed starting because I'm still about, I believe, 4 or 5 weeks away from my average last frost date. So I still have time to be doing seed starting. And then I'm starting to harden off plants, and I'll make another video showing you my process for doing that and which plants I'm hardening off. And then I just want to continue cleaning my flower beds, one flower bed at a time. So when it comes to videos, I'll be sure to show you a little bit of what I'm doing here and there, even if I don't show you the whole process. On a different day, even though I wanted to give you a tour of my whole entire nursery and all the plants that were down here, maybe a different day we'll come down and we'll do more cleanup, or I'll clean up on my own and then give you a tour. Let me know in the comments which one you would prefer. I'd love to know. But otherwise, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next week, is just continuing to do this type of cleanup. And like I said, the next thing will be to sprinkle a little bit of 10-10-10, water it in, and then put in the wood chips in the pathways and start working on my listing on Facebook Marketplace. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please drop them down below. If there's anything else you want me to talk about when it comes to plant nursery, definitely mention that as well. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.